Thank you, Chairman Brown. Less than a month ago, President Biden made a call for unity, and he promised a COVID strategy based on truth, not politics, based on science, not denial. That's a quote. And it's what makes it so disappointing that our Democratic colleagues in the White House are pushing this $1.9 trillion spending bill. They're using a process that is designed to not find common ground, designed to be purely partisan. It is not informed by any objective measure of needs. The only organizing principle seems to be to spend as much money as possible and willfully ignore the adverse impacts of these policies. Now, COVID has been an extraordinary crisis, no question about it. And Congress responded in an extraordinary way. When the government shut down the economy because of COVID in March and April of last year, it produced a crisis that Congress responded to with, over the course of last year, 5 overwhelmingly bipartisan bills, almost $4 trillion in relief. One of these bills was signed into law less than 2 months ago. And now, and for some time now, the economy has been in a recovery mode. In April, the unemployment rate was 14.8%. In January of this year, it's down to 6.3%, and 18 states have unemployment rates below 5%. GDP growth in the last 2 quarters has been extraordinary, and the consensus for this entire year is to have extremely strong economic growth, could be as much as 5%. Now, there's certainly serious suffering occurring in those industries, among workers in the industries that have been hard hit: hospitality, travel, entertainment, leisure. But this bill isn't targeted at them. This bill is a wasteful, not at all targeted, and largely unrelated to COVID bill. Just consider some of the items. The so-called universal stimulus checks, the vast majority of the 160 million Americans that have received checks never experienced any loss of income. And under President Biden's plan, if they follow the eligibility criteria of the first 2 rounds, then there'll be families with 6-figure incomes, no loss of income, and they'll receive another $10,000 plus in checks. Extra unemployment insurance benefits will result in about half of all beneficiaries getting paid more not to work than they get paid to work. How does that respect the dignity of work? A minimum wage increase to $15 that the CBO projects will cost 1.3 million to 3.7 million jobs and deny so many young people, especially, that first step on the economic ladder. We have a witness today, Gianni Crecchiolo, and he's going to tell us firsthand the kind of impact on his employees of the $15 minimum wage he's been subject to. State and local government, another terrible idea, driven by apparently a desire to bail out fiscally irresponsible cities and states. Consider this. In the aggregate, state and local governments for 2020 took in an all-time record amount of revenue. Let me say this again. There was no huge collapse of revenue. In 2020, state and local governments set a new all-time record high for revenue. That does not count the $572 billion that we sent them anyway over the course of last year. And now we're told we need to send them another $350 billion on top of that. Transit, $30 billion. Congress already provided $39 billion for transit, of which $14 billion was appropriated just 2 months ago. We're now supposed to send yet another $30 billion. Housing, $40 billion for housing assistance. We provided $40 billion in response to COVID and $25 billion for rental assistance, again, less than 2 months ago. And that's all, of course, on top of the $800 billion the federal government has provided in stimulus checks and unemployment insurance benefits to cover expenses like rents and mortgages. So, Mr. Chairman, it's disappointing to me that the president's call for unity is starting to ring hollow. All five of the relief bills enacted to date were overwhelmingly bipartisan. There's a reason that this one is not, and it's because there's no rational economic justification for what's in it. This bill is not about COVID. It's not about an economic recovery. It's not about stimulus. It appears to be more about enacting a long-standing Democratic Party wish list. The focus of Congress should be working to return the economy to the pre-COVID strength we had, where we were at record low unemployment levels and there were more job openings than there were people looking for jobs. That's what we need to get back to. One of the things that we should be insisting on is that schools reopen. The president says he's going to be guided by science. Well, the science is in. CDC research shows it is safe to reopen schools, and it is necessary for the sake of our kids that we do so. These closures have been very harmful to student performance and well-being in a variety of ways. So, Mr. Chairman, I think the focus should be on the actions that will help this economy recover instead of using the pandemic and the past economic crisis of early last year to justify partisan policy priorities.